I'm wearing the appropriate shirt for today's video. I love this shirt. So here is the situation. It's actually a couple days before Christmas whenever I'm filming this. You'll be seeing this after Christmas, but the children are here for basically like 10 days and they are going to want to eat all the things. My kids are pretty decent eaters. I have one kid that is what I like to call a fill the tank kid, meaning she can go a couple of meals where maybe she only eats 6 bites of something and it's super frustrating. And then she'll sit down at a meal and she'll have like 4 pancakes and 2 sausage patties and 4 slices of bacon and a biscuit and 3 glasses of orange juice and 2 cups of fruit. Basically, she's my fill the tank kid. Do any of you have eaters like that? My oldest daughter is basically a teenager. I mean, she's 12 and a half, so she's going through another growth spurt. She's got a good appetite. And then there's my son, and that kid is a bottomless pit. He just turned 8 years old. And I know some of you with teenage boys have warned me, and I don't know what we're gonna do or what it's gonna do to the grocery budget when that kid becomes a teenager. I kid you not, true story. The other day, my son sat down on the couch with a bucket of chicken. How he came into possession of a bucket of chicken is another story entirely, but basically my husband was doing me a favor running the mom taxi on a night when I didn't feel very well. And when they drove by a certain chicken place, my 8-year-old son asked for chicken and my husband was like, sure, let's go get some chicken. So my son walks into the house with this bucket of chicken after swim practice and he plants himself on the couch next to me with a napkin in his lap and he proceeds to eat it directly from the bucket. He ate 8 pieces of chicken before we cut him off. Can you believe that? 8 pieces of chicken, an 8-year-old. All that's to say, my children are about to be home for breakfast, lunch, dinner, second breakfast, 11sies, second lunch, late dinner, midnight snack, what have you. So I thought that maybe it would be wise to prepare for that and make a few things that we can have for meals and snacks as everybody's going to be home here in the next few weeks. So if you're watching this video in the first few days it goes up, you have probably just survived Christmas and you are looking at the back half of winter break when the kids are home from school, and I hope that this gives you some good ideas. I've actually already made one batch of Chex Mix the old-fashioned way using the oven, but we're gonna make another one using the crock pot. Yes, I said crock pot. We're gonna make party mix using the crock pot. And I also wanted to share with you some of the things I've learned to make my Chex Mix better, like take it up a notch. So I know you're probably thinking Chex Mix, snack mix. We all know how to do that, right? The recipe's on the side of the box or on the back of the box. But I do a few things differently and I'm gonna share some of those tips with you and hopefully they will come in handy, so stay with me. My first tip is one that I actually shared in my holiday, like cheap holiday snacks video that I put up last week, and that is to sift your dry goods. If you are not sifting the crumbs out of your dry goods, then all of those crumbs are soaking up the butter and the sauce that you're gonna put on it. And let's face it, you're not gonna eat the crumbs, right? You want all of it to go to this good stuff. So you wanna sift all the crumbs out of your dry ingredients. You guys look. I mean, those are all the crumbs that I sifted out of the dry goods that are going into my Chex Mix. I mean, that will drain all of the butter and all of the seasonings and stuff from this stuff right here. It'll soak it all up and then you won't be getting it on the stuff that you're actually eating. So if you don't use double butter, are you even making Chex Mix? Instead of using the 6 tablespoons it calls for, I use 1.5 sticks, which is basically 3/4 of a cup or 12 tablespoons of butter. And I don't feel too bad about it because I have a pretty heavy hand with the cereal that I put in here. And I also like to add some kind of cracker like a Cheez-It, which is what I use today, or Goldfish, or maybe some mini saltines or something just to kind of bulk it up. Double butter, y'all, all the way. When it comes to the buttery sauce and seasoning, I don't mess around with any 1/4 teaspoons or 1/2 teaspoons. I just use a full teaspoon of onion powder, a full teaspoon of garlic powder, and 2 teaspoons of seasoning salt. I realized I was gonna have to mix this by hand because my bowl isn't quite big enough. And I'm wearing the gloves because I don't want my hands to smell like Worcestershire sauce all day. Now, if you're asking yourself, Mindy, where are the nuts? You haven't added any mixed nuts or any peanuts to this. Are you guys allergic? We don't have any allergies in this house, but I wait to add the nuts until after I have stirred the buttery sauce over all of the dry goods, because typically nuts have already been roasted, especially when I'm using cocktail peanuts like I am today. So they already have oil or butter or seasoning of some kind, so I don't really need them to soak up any of the butter or the seasonings. I'm going to stir them in at the end. Have you guys ever made Chex Mix in the crock pot before? We are going to today. And I wish my crock pot was just a little bit bigger. I probably have overfilled it just a tad, but it's okay. This is actually a crock pot that I picked up on clearance last summer. So I have put my Chex Mix in here. I did line the crock pot with parchment paper, and I'm just gonna pop the lid on and put that on low. And about every 30 minutes, I come and give it a little shake, a little stir, maybe sprinkle in a little more seasoning salt. And after a couple of hours or so, it's done. Okay, so full disclosure, I definitely overfilled my crock pot a little bit, so it's taking longer for the Chex Mix to, crisp up. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop it into my roasting pan and roast it in the oven at 250 for another like 20 or 30 minutes or so, just to kind of finish the process, because everything still is just a little bit soft. But I have done this successfully in the crock pot many times. It's just failing me, of course, on the day when I really need it to work out, because I'm showing you guys how to do it. But I will leave something linked in the description box that gives, specific instructions for how to do Chex Mix in the crock pot in case you want to go and check that out. And hopefully my other tips for making delicious Chex Mix will come in handy for you anyway. Okay, next up, we are going to make some super easy 4-ingredient salsa pinwheels, little tortilla roll-ups that will be great snacks for everybody. I have my block of cream cheese in here. I had to pop it in the microwave for about 30 seconds to soften it because I forgot to pull it out of the refrigerator this morning so it could soften. I'm gonna add probably about a cup of salsa. This is just like Aldi brand salsa. I'm just going to use my hand mixer to mix that all together until it's smooth. Here's how I do this, and it does require one little extra step that I think makes them so much easier to cut. I'm gonna start with a little piece of saran wrap here. I'm gonna put a tortilla on here, and I'm gonna spread just a really thin layer of my salsa and cream cheese mixture. And it is a little thinner once you put the salsa into it, but I'm not super worried about that because it will set back up in the refrigerator. Then I'm going to just put a couple pieces of turkey, or not turkey, this is actually chicken. You could use turkey though. I think when I actually initially learned this recipe, it was a Weight Watchers recipe. It was back in my Weight Watchers years, and it used shredded chicken, and you would just mix that in, but I'm taking the easy route. I didn't want to cook any chicken, so we're just using deli chicken. Then I'm just gonna roll this up super tight like this, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in, roll it in the saran wrap, and I'm gonna put it in the refrigerator along with all of its little buddies that I'm getting ready to roll up here. And I'm going to let those set in the refrigerator for a few hours, and then I will unroll them, slice them, and put them back into my little pan here, and then everybody can eat them as they want to. They can get into the refrigerator and grab one or two, or they can have some for lunch or for a snack or something like that. But I do like to let them set up as the whole tortilla roll up and then slice them so that I don't have like a big old mess. I find that one of the ways I can help the kids be a little bit more self-sufficient when it comes to meals and snacks is to do a little bit of prep work up front, making things more visible and accessible to them. So sometimes this means taking things out of packages and putting them into clear bins, clearly visible in the pantry on the first couple of shelves that they can reach easily so that they can make their own meals and snacks. I also try to take a look at the produce that we have available. Does it need to be washed? Does it need to be prepped in any way? Can it be placed in any containers that are more visible in the refrigerator or in the pantry so that the kids can see it? I have some special bins in my refrigerator that I've shown you guys before. I actually just picked these up at Dollar Tree, and I put like yogurts and string cheeses and different kinds of cheese in these bins as well, and it sits on the lowest level of the fridge so that the kids can see it and so that they have access to it whenever they want a snack or if they need to pack a lunch for something. So this does involve a little bit of extra work for me up front, but it saves me a lot of time in the long run because it makes it easier for the kids to be able to prepare some things for themselves. I also wanted to prep something for the freezer to have for dinner on a night when we get really busy, or maybe when I'm just tired of cooking, because let's be honest, that happens over Christmas break too, am I right? And you guys have heard me mention several times my friend Carrie over at Lazy Day Cooking Club. She and her sister Christina have a subscription service where they drop new crockpot recipes into their member dashboards every single month. And these are unique because they are designed for freezer prep. So they give instructions on how to prep these meals for the freezer and then what to do on cooking day to cook them. So I will leave a link in the description box below, and if you use the code Mindy50, you get 50% off your first month there with Lazy Day Cooking Club. I am prepping a creamy bacon and vegetable soup, so let me show you how I'm doing that. This is what I have prepped to go in the freezer. I have half an onion chopped, 2 cups of carrots chopped, 1 stalk of celery chopped, 6 pieces of bacon cooked and chopped. I will put that all into a gallon-sized freezer bag along with 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, a teaspoon of salt, cracked black pepper to taste, and then 2 tablespoons of flour and 2 tablespoons of butter, which I chopped up. So that is what is going into the freezer. When I have done these meals before, you guys have often asked to see them when they're cooked, because when I'm filming, a freezer cooking video, you don't always see the finished product. So today you are getting your wish, because actually I prepped 2 of these, and one of them I put into the crock pot directly so that we can have it for dinner. So let me show you what I'm adding to this, and you'll get to see the finished product. This is everything that went into my freezer bag that I showed you guys, plus about 2 or 3 teaspoons or so of this better than bouillon. The original recipe calls for 6 cups of chicken broth to be added to this the day of cooking. I use this and then just add water. I am, however, only going to add 3 cups of water instead of the 6 it calls for, because it also calls for broccoli in this soup, and I'm gonna leave that out. But I am going to add this is probably 4 or 5 cups of diced potatoes, peeled and chopped. So those are going in there. You can't put potatoes in the freezer like this. I'm gonna pour my 3 cups of water in there. And then the recipe calls for a cup of heavy cream, but I'm gonna use just about 1.5 to 2 cups of half and half instead. Little black pepper. I want to make sure that all of my potatoes are submerged there so that they get cooked here. All right, I'm going to pop the lid on that, and I'm going to cook it on low all day, probably about 6 or 7 hours, and then we'll come back and finish it out. My soup has been cooking all afternoon. It smells amazing. Everything is done. The potatoes are tender. The carrots are tender. All I'm going to do now is stir in 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. The original recipe calls for 2, but since I scaled it down a little bit today, I'm just going to add 1, and then it will be pretty much ready to serve. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you real soon.